We're going to take a look tonight at a little bit of philosophy and how philosophy might be able to help us cope with the inherent uncertainty that's out in the world. We got the coronavirus just to kind of go through this one last time. Hopefully we can start putting this behind this virus. But, once the virus set in and it became sort of the new normal for society, the uncertainty just kind of went up in volume, right? So it was, look at the date, December 2019. This is when the coronavirus became a global pandemic. And you can see a picture there, sort of the new normal, if you will. Face mask, gloves, hand sanitizer, right? These things are still with us, right? Now we got a double mask to get the numbers where we want them, right? And you can see the coronavirus, a picture of it right there. And so this little, this virus is throwing the world to quite a different trajectory, right? And so we start to wake up every day, and the first thought that's, was on my mind for sure is, how and when will this end? We know we have vaccines, so we know how it's going to end, right? We've got great vaccines out there, tremendous efficacy rates, right? But still, the uncertainty lingers. And so when is there going to be a return to some normality? When can I go to the movies again, right? These kinds of questions. And so the argument I want to make and what I want to submit to everyone is that no matter when a more certain future arrives, some aspects of life will nevertheless remain the same. So as chaotic as things are now, there are some things that just will not change for us. And one thing that will not change, there'll still be uncertainty. So it's a little bit of Descartes here, if you will, if you know philosophy, but I think, therefore I am, or I doubt, therefore I exist. So the twist on that is the only certainty is the uncertainty itself. Even with vaccines, even with a return to a different world than we live now, it's still going to be modified and won't be exactly the same. Social fabric is completely different because of pandemics, right? History merits this out. And we can look at economic data right now and just see the way society is being changed politically too, all right? So all these different facets. And still, even, despite all these things that's going to be changed, it's still going to be uncertain. We don't necessarily know how things will be different in the future, just that they will be different. And this can make us very, very anxious about the future itself. And so what we would like to do is we want to ask questions that will help us retain power and cope with this uncertainty. The same very thing that we're doing right now at this great TEDx talk, right? And so when we start to ask ourselves these questions about the future, about what's in our control and what's outside our control, we soon find out that much of what's happening, just like the pandemic itself, is outside of our control. And the pandemic maybe kind of shifts our focus onto other aspects of our life that aren't in our control on a day-to-day basis. And so when we start to ask these questions and really sort of dig into what is making us feel this anxiety, the mere fact that we're sitting down thinking about them becomes a sort of meditation. Intellectual rumination is a type of meditation. You slow your mind down by asking questions. What's important, what's not, what can I control, what can't I control, right? And this has a calming effect. And so I would like to ask everyone, right, just recall a past experience where you had to put reason in charge. So this could, it's going to be different for everyone. So it could be a position where you were with your parents and you did something wrong or there was a misunderstanding and your parents are kind of really coming at you and they're going to discipline you and you're like, that they're kind of wrong and you're right, but you don't say anything because it's not going to change anyone's mind. Or you're at a job and you've got this real annoying coworker, but you need this job. And there's plenty of times that you just want to yell at this coworker, but you can't. Reason's got to get in charge, and you can't become to emotionally charge as a result of this. And so what we start to see is that when we recall experiences like this, and I can think of ones with my two younger brothers. They've got me emotionally worked up all the time. Just gotta let it go. That's them, right? Some people aren't going to change, and you just recognize that and you move on. So on these notes, right, we've got this reason and emotion, right? We've got our good sort of sense and our emotional side. We struggle with this sort of reptilian part of our brain, right? That amygdala, that emotional part. And it's really hard work to put your good sense in charge. In fact, this is what they call, in some ways, growing up, right? Some people never grow up. So we'll use that phrase for what it's worth. But, to grow up in some way means to become conscious of yourself, where you put reason in charge over emotions. And the reason why, when we start to slow down and think about whether or not we should get worked up about something, is that thinking informs the worth or value. So you go, you know what? It's just not worth it. And so what I would like to present is that we want to use Stoic philosophy that takes this general point of view of the world and says, okay, what is worth worrying about and what is not? Is this particular thing I'm worried about? Should I get worked up about it now? Is it something I can change? Is it something I can't change? Is it outside of my control, right? And so Stoic philosophy comes out of the ancient world, right? Ancient Rome, although as we'll see, it's got its roots in ancient Athens. It helps keep your mind on the present. And this is very much in line with what meditation says, that when you're focused on the present, you're, again, less anxious about the future, and you're not worried about a past that people tend to get a little depressed about, right? So those are sort of the two extremes there. When you're focused on the present and focused on the now, your thoughts are within your control. And there's a picture here of ancient Rome, and I think it's important to recognize the context of Stoic philosophy, at least where we're going to look where it was developed by the three main sort of proponents that are the most well-known. Ancient Rome, America, right? We come right out of ancient Rome. Our federal form of government comes from Rome. The whole reason why we study history is to learn lessons. And so Stoic philosophy is very much in vogue today. It's back in fashion, I should say. And the fact that our comparisons to ancient Rome in a broad way are very salient. Okay, I'm not talking about sort of any particular comparison. I'm talking about the broad strokes of history. The whole reason why we study history is that this is not only just in our heritage, but we seem to be as a nation sort of in maybe the same spot as ancient Rome. Many people have written about this, so I encourage you to look into the similarities between modern America and ancient Rome. Okay, so Stoicism. Let's get a definition of it, right? It's a type of virtue ethics, and what they argue is that practicing virtue or happiness is a necessary and sufficient thing to do, right? So if you do not practice virtue in your own life, you will not be happy, according to the Stoics. Now, Stoicism is founded by a guy named Zeno. He's preaching on the Stoa, or the porch. This is in ancient Athens. And the Stoicism we're going to look at in Rome, it's kind of a little bit more evolved, but 300 years plus, a little bit later. And what they come to find out is in this big, sprawling imperial power of Rome, that there are many things outside of your control. And that the imperial structure is so large, and the Roman government, so big, the army so expansive, so on and so forth, that you feel as an individual like you are lost because so much is out of your control. And so what the Stoics emphasized was that indifference to certain aspects of society could help you practice virtue by not worrying about every little thing, but focusing on the important thing, which was your character, and developing it, and worrying about the things that were necessary to worry about. Okay? And as we have at the bottom there, revival in the 21st century with cognitive behavioral therapy and similar approach. So again, very much back today. I'll just say this, on ancient Greek, Stoicism is a bit of a blending of Plato and Aristotle. At the end of the day, they're going to sort of fall in line with Plato, but they're sort of developing this praxis or practical side of virtue, because in order to achieve excellence in your life is going to require you to practice, and that's got to become habitual. So we'll look at three quotes from three famous Stoics: Seneca the Younger, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius. All right, so Seneca first here. You can see this is from his Moral Letters to Lucilius. If you would put off all worry, assume that what you fear may happen will certainly happen in any event, and whatever the trouble may be, measure it in your mind and estimate the amount of your fear. You will thus understand that what you fear is either insignificant or short-lived. So the point what Seneca is, I think, trying to make here is that many times we'll just take, let's say you got a big assignment due, right? And you just put it off, and you put it off, and you put the assignment off. And you're like, at some point, the assignment's going to be due, right? And so you have to tackle it. And then you actually sit down and you tackle the assignment. You go for it, and you go, oh, it's actually not that bad. So sometimes the things that we fear or we're not looking forward to doing, they're actually not that bad. In other words, it's not that things are good or bad, but thinking them makes it so sometimes, right? And so we are sort of deluding ourselves in that respect. All right, next one, Epictetus. All right, so we go from Seneca, who was a statesman, to Epictetus, who becomes a freed slave, starts a school. He is free who lives as he wishes to live, who is neither subject to compulsion, nor to hindrance, nor to force, whose movements to action are not impeded, whose desires attain their purpose, and who does not fall into that which he would avoid. So the Stoics are onto this sort of route to happiness, that it's important what you do. That's extremely important. But of equal importance is what you avoid. And so happiness, it just doesn't have this positive connotation to it where you can go out and achieve it and make it happen through your own willpower. But you have to avoid things that are going to get in the way of you practicing your virtue, right? To become happy. And so that's what they refer to as sort of a negative view of happiness, right? It's the absence of those things. So if you want to avoid them, make sure you avoid them, because they're not going to help you attain your purpose, right? And the last person here is the most famous Stoic of them all today. He writes the very famous The Meditations. And Marcus Aurelius is the last good emperor of Rome, of the five. And his book, The Meditations, has become almost biblical in some ways in leadership circles, as we'll see. But here we go. Do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. Death hangs over you. While you live, while it's in your power, be good. So if you become too emotionally charged about some things, you will act and you let other things distract you, throw you off balance. You're going to forget to live your life because you're going to be too busy worrying about fears that are really, really may not be in your control. Kind of at the end of the day, aren't really fears because you thought they were, but they really weren't. And again, focus on the present here, right? It's time to get going, right? Yes, you can be get emotionally charged, but get emotionally charged about the right things, right? Time is precious. And so, does the application of this ancient wisdom, does it really help to achieve success or happiness in life? This is big business nowadays, ladies and gentlemen. This is, we can look over here, Stoicism, 20 of the best books, right? Harvard Business School, books about leadership on Stoicism, because if you make a bad business decision, you can't let that, detract you from the mission, right, of the company or whatever it is. Maybe you're an entrepreneur, there's a purpose here. And if you let a bad past decision always come into your mind, that's good. That's just going to be very fateful. Okay. So you have to sort of order the inner part of us. It's got to mirror what we want on the outside, right? So we've got to sort of brush off the bad experience that we had. And so Barack Obama down here, famous professed Stoic, right? He says he is. How to be a Stoic in the workplace. We kind of talked about that earlier. Down here, I always like to shout out the Garden State, right? We're in New Jersey. Two guys from New Jersey wrote a book on Stoicism, how it's helped them. And podcast, Stoic podcast. The Daily Stoic is started by a guy named Holiday, and you can get a Stoic affirmation kind of sent to you every single day because, again, this takes practice to remind ourselves that we can't let everything sort of bother us. We've got to keep our mind on the aim and what it is. And so just key takeaways here, so we'll kind of wrap up. Stoics kind of remind us to stop and reflect on what really matters in life and what's within our control. Don't waste your time because you'll never get it back, right? Virtue requires putting reason in charge of your emotions to avoid unnecessary anxiety by practice. So we build this sort of clarity of mind and certainty in our mind through practice and through habit. And at the end of the day, you have to be confident in your own judgment. Oscar Wilde, famously said, "Be yourself. Everyone else is taken." And I think that's good advice here. And the Stoics remind us that your character is your character, and to go a little bit further in their philosophy, they think that the universe is part of a big grand design, and that your inner character, what you're interested in, what you want to pursue in life, that this is also part of the grand design. And so for you not to pursue your happiness, what's going to make you feel like authentic person, you're not really following what you were put here for. And you're depriving us of your greatness as well. So be the best you possible, right? And so at the end here, just kind of bring it back full circle. There's still going to be uncertainty in the world once this coronavirus pandemic, ends or gets muted or comes to a conclusion, whatever the case may be, and we evolve to another aspect of it, and hopefully we can put it behind us. But, the world's still going to be uncertain. We're still going to have to judge reason versus our emotion, right? And there's where the certainty lies, that our thoughts are within our control. And so we'll just end right here, again, with Marcus Aurelius, a quote by him, that it is in your power whenever you will to choose to retreat into yourself. All right. Thank you.